The cargo ship Atlas 7 moved slowly through the darkness near Jupiter's outer mining colonies. Inside the ship, workers carried metal containers through long gray hallways, while pilots checked navigation screens. Everything looked normal. Nobody knew death was already coming toward them, far outside the ship, hidden inside the shadow of a broken asteroid field. Dozens of black alien warships waited silently. Their engines made no sound. Their weapons were already locked on the human ship. Inside the lead vessel of the Varkal Dominion fleet, Commander Reth stood beside a glowing screen. His cold yellow eyes studied the human cargo ship carefully. "Primitive species," one alien officer said. "They still use human pilots instead of machine minds," another officer laughed quietly. "They are weak." Commander Reth did not answer immediately. For many years, the Varkal Empire had watched humanity from far away. Humans stayed inside their own territory. They rarely attacked other races. They avoided galactic politics. To the Varkal Empire, that looked like fear, and fearful species were easy to conquer. Commander Reth finally raised one clawed hand. "Begin the attack," he ordered. A second later, the darkness exploded with blue fire. Energy cannons slammed into the side of Atlas 7. Warning sirens screamed through every hallway. Red emergency lights flashed above frightened workers. The entire ship shook violently in the security room. Sergeant Ethan Cross grabbed the side of a table before falling. He was tall, heavily built, and carried years of combat scars across his face. The moment the alarm started, his expression became calm, not scared, calm. "Report," Ethan shouted. A young officer looked up from a damaged screen. "Unknown ships attacking us," she said nervously. "Multiple hull breaches." Another explosion shook the room. Far above them, part of the ceiling collapsed in sparks. People began screaming through the communication channels. Ethan quickly grabbed his pulse rifle from the wall. "How many civilians on board?" he asked. "Over 200, Ethan nodded once. "Get them to escape pods now." The officer looked shocked. "What about you?" Ethan loaded his weapon. "I'll buy time." Before anyone could answer, the main blast door suddenly exploded inward. Smoke filled the hallway, then the aliens entered. Tall armored soldiers marched through the fire carrying glowing weapons. Their black armor looked almost machine-like. One worker fired at them in panic. The alien soldier did not even slow down. A blue energy blast hit the worker instantly. The man disappeared in burning light. Fear spread across the hallway, but Ethan stepped forward. "Move!" he shouted at the civilians. "Run!" The workers rushed toward the escape tunnels while Ethan opened fire. His rifle thundered through the corridor. Bullets slammed into alien armor. One alien fell, then another. The Varkal soldiers paused in surprise. Humans were supposed to panic. Humans were supposed to surrender. But this human kept advancing, even while outnumbered. Commander Reth watched the battle through a drone feed. "That human," he said slowly. "Why does he continue fighting?" An officer beside him answered. "Possibly defensive instinct," but Reth was no longer certain. Because the human soldier was smiling inside the burning hallway. Ethan fired until his rifle overheated. Then he grabbed a metal tool from the wall and charged directly into the aliens. The nearest Varkal soldier raised his weapon too slowly. Ethan smashed the tool into the alien's helmet, hard enough to crack the armor. Another alien fired. The blast hit Ethan's shoulder and threw him against the wall. Pain rushed through his body, but somehow he stood again. Blood covered one side of his uniform. Still he moved forward. Still he fought. The alien slowly stepped backward for the first time in many years. Varkal soldiers felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Finally, more alien reinforcements arrived. Heavy plasma fire filled the corridor. Ethan realized he could not hold them much longer. Through his communicator, a voice suddenly spoke. "Escape pods launched successfully. Ethan closed his eyes for one brief second. Good. The civilians were safe. That was enough. He lowered his damaged rifle slowly. Alien soldiers surrounded him from every side. Commander Ref entered the hallway moments later. The tall alien leader stared directly at Ethan. Smoke drifted between them. Bodies covered the metal floor. Most of them belonged to Varkal soldiers. Ref studied the wounded human carefully. "You protected civilians instead of saving yourself," the commander said. Ethan wiped blood from his mouth. "That's what humans do," he answered. One alien officer pointed a weapon at Ethan's head. "Kill him," but Commander Ref suddenly raised his hand. "No." The officer looked confused. Ref kept staring at Ethan. "I want this one alive." Heavy restraints locked around Ethan's arms. Yet even then, he did not look afraid. That bothered Commander Ref more than the fighting. As alien ships prepared to leave the battlefield, Ethan quietly looked out a nearby window toward deep space. Toward Earth, one alien guard noticed the expression on his face. "You are smiling," the guard said nervously. "Why?" Ethan looked directly at him. "Because," he said softly. "Now humanity knows you're here." And for the very first time, the alien guard felt true fear. The massive alien warship drifted silently through deep space near the outer edge of Varkal territory. Inside the cold metal prison sector, Sergeant Ethan Cross sat alone behind a glowing energy barrier. 3 days had passed since his capture aboard Atlas 7. 3 days without sleep. 3 days of interrogation, yet somehow the humans still looked calm. That alone disturbed the aliens outside the prison cell. 2 Varkal guards watched Ethan carefully. "He should be broken by now," one guard whispered. "No species survives this long after neural scanning." The second guard looked nervous. "Humans are different," he replied quietly. Inside the interrogation chamber above the prison block, Commander Ref studied several holographic reports floating in the air. Human biology files, combat recordings, pain resistance measurements. None of it made sense. A Varkal scientist stood beside him. "The human body continues functioning even after severe trauma," the scientist explained. "Pain levels that disable most species only slow them down." Commander Ref narrowed his eyes. "And mentally," the scientist hesitated. "That is worse." Ref turned slowly. "Explain." The scientist activated another screen. Images from Ethan's interrogations appeared. Electric shock tests, sleep deprivation, psychological pressure. But in every recording, Ethan refused to beg, refused to panic. Sometimes he even laughed. "He should hate us," the scientist admitted. "But instead, he keeps observing everything around him, studying us, learning." Commander Ref stared silently at the screen. The human prisoner looked less like prey and more like a predator waiting patiently. Suddenly, warning lights flashed across the command room. An officer rushed inside. "Commander." Long-range scanners detected unknown vessels entering border space. Ref looked up quickly. "How many?" the officer swallowed nervously. "Only 5 ships," several alien officers laughed. "5 human ships," one mocked. "They came all this way to die." But Commander Ref did not laugh. Something felt wrong, very wrong. Meanwhile, deep inside the prison sector, Ethan quietly counted the movement pattern of the guards outside his cell. Every 6 minutes, security rotation. Every 11 minutes, camera reset. Every 20 minutes, food delivery. The aliens believed humans only fought with strength. They did not understand patience. One guard approached the cell carrying a food container. The moment the energy shield lowered slightly, Ethan suddenly moved, fast. His hand grabbed the guard's arm before the alien could react. The second guard shouted in panic. Ethan pulled the first guard into the barrier field. Blue energy exploded across the hallway. The alien collapsed instantly unconscious before the second guard fired. Ethan already had the weapon. 2 quick shots. The hallway lights shattered. Darkness filled the prison block. Alarm sirens screamed immediately, "Prisoner escape! Prisoner escape!" across the warship. Armed soldiers rushed toward the lower prison decks. Commander Reth stood up sharply. How did one prisoner escape a maximum security cell? Nobody answered. Because nobody understood it, inside the dark corridors, Ethan moved silently through the ship. He did not run wildly. He observed, listened, learned. Every hallway, every door, every weapon position. The Varkal soldiers hunted him in groups, but somehow the human always disappeared before they arrived. Fear slowly spread through the crew. One soldier nervously whispered. "He moves like he belongs here," another answered quietly. "Maybe humans are natural hunters." Finally, security teams cornered Ethan near the engine sector. More than 30 armed soldiers surrounded him. Weapons aimed from every direction. Commander Reth himself stepped forward. "You cannot escape," he said coldly. Ethan leaned casually against the wall, despite the weapons pointed at him. "I know," he replied. Reth looked confused. "Then why do this?" Ethan smiled slightly. "To teach you something." The commander remained silent. Ethan slowly looked around at the armed soldiers. "You think humans are weak because we avoid war," he said. "But that's the difference between us." He pointed toward the nervous alien soldiers. "You enjoy war. Humans survive it." For a moment, nobody moved. Even the Varkal soldiers felt uncomfortable hearing those words. Then suddenly, another alarm echoed across the ship. This time louder, more urgent. Terrified officer appeared on the nearest screen. "Commander," he shouted, "human warships have crossed the border." The room instantly became silent. Reth said. The stars above Varkal border space burned with fire. Destroyed alien warships floated silently through the darkness, while emergency signals echoed across military channels. Only 5 human ships had entered Varkal territory. 5, yet entire defense stations were already gone. Inside the command chamber of the Varkal flagship, fear slowly spread among the officers. Nobody understood how human ships moved so fast, or how their weapons destroyed armored stations within minutes. Commander Reth stood silently before the giant holographic battlefield map. Red warning symbols flashed across the screen. Border Station 12, destroyed. Defense Fleet 3, destroyed. Outer Listening Post, lost. An officer looked toward Reth nervously. "Commander, should we return the human prisoner?" Before Reth could answer, another explosion shook the flagship. The entire room trembled violently. "Direct hit," someone shouted. "That's impossible," another officer yelled. "They're still outside firing range," but human weapons ignored normal combat distance. That frightened the Varkal officers even more. Meanwhile, deep inside the prison sector, Ethan Cross sat calmly inside a reinforced cell, unlike before. This prison had triple security fields and heavy armored guards surrounding every hallway. The aliens no longer underestimated him. Still, Ethan looked relaxed. A young Varkal guard stared at him nervously from outside the barrier. "Why are humans doing this?" the guard asked quietly. "Why risk war for one soldier?" Ethan slowly looked up. "Because nobody gets left behind," he answered. The guard frowned in confusion. "That makes no sense. One life cannot matter more than an empire." Ethan gave a small smile. "That's why humans are dangerous. Far away near the edge of the battlefield, 5 enormous human warships moved through space in perfect formation. Their dark metal hulls reflected distant starlight. Unlike alien ships covered in glowing decorations, human vessels looked simple, cold, heavy, built only for war. At the center of the fleet floated the battleship UEF Titan. Inside its command bridge, Admiral Vera Holt watched the battlefield carefully. She was older than Ethan, calm, sharp-eyed, and feared by almost every enemy humanity had ever faced. A communication officer turned toward her. "Admiral, Varkal fleets are regrouping near the prison flagship." Vera nodded once. Good, she said. That's where we want them. Another officer looked surprised. Ma'am, we are outnumbered almost 40-1, Vera remained calm. Then they brought just enough ships to lose properly, around the bridge. Human officers smiled slightly, not because they were arrogant. Because they trusted human strategy. Suddenly, alarms echoed across the bridge. Enemy fleet approaching. The main screen filled with hundreds of alien warships emerging from hyperspace. The Varkal Dominion had finally sent a real fleet. Commander Reth appeared on the communication screen moments later. His expression remained cold. Human Admiral, he said. You are heavily outnumbered. Leave our territory immediately. Admiral Vera folded her hands behind her back. You attacked civilian ships first, she replied calmly. You started this. Reth's eyes narrowed. You would risk thousands of lives for one soldier, Vera answered without hesitation. Yes, the alien officers watching the transmission looked shocked. To them, it sounded insane. But to humans, it was normal. Reth slowly leaned forward. Then your species is foolish. For the first time. Vera smiled slightly. No, she said quietly. Just loyal. The transmission ended immediately. Seconds later, the battlefield exploded into chaos. Human ships accelerated directly toward the massive alien fleet. No hesitation, no fear, blue plasma fire filled space from every direction. Alien warships fired thousands of energy cannons at once. But human ships moved aggressively through the attack lines. The UEF Titan smashed through two smaller alien cruisers without slowing down. Railgun rounds tore through Varkal armor like paper. Entire alien formations collapsed within minutes. Inside the prison ship, alarms screamed constantly. The floor shook from nearby explosions. Several guards looked terrified. One whispered softly. They fight like machines, Ethan heard him and shook his head. No, he replied. Machines fear breaking. Humans don't. Above the battlefield. Commander Reth watched in disbelief as human ships ignored damage that should have forced retreat. One burning human cruiser continued attacking even after losing half its engines. Another ship ran directly into a Varkal destroyer just to open a path for Allied vessels. The aliens had never seen warfare like this before. Most species fought to survive, humans fought to win. Suddenly, another officer rushed toward Reth in panic. Commander. Human boarding ships detected. Reth looked shocked. In the middle of battle. Yes, sir. They are heading directly toward this flagship. Before Reth could react, emergency explosions echoed through the lower decks. Human Marines had already entered the ship. Gunfire spread through the corridors. Smoke filled ventilation systems, and somewhere inside the chaos, Ethan Cross slowly stood up inside his prison cell. Because he recognized the sound immediately. Human soldiers were coming for him. A few seconds later, the lights inside the prison block suddenly died. Darkness covered the hallway. Then one terrifying sound echoed through the metal corridors. Heavy human boots moving closer. Darkness covered the prison sector of the Varkal flagship. Only the flashing red emergency lights illuminated the metal hallways. Smoke drifted through the air while distant explosions shook the giant warship again and again. Somewhere nearby, humans and aliens were fighting room by room. The sound of gunfire echoed endlessly through the corridors. Inside his reinforced prison cell, Sergeant Ethan Cross stood completely still. Listening, waiting. Then he heard it clearly. Heavy human combat boots, closer now. A second later, the prison hallway exploded into chaos. The main security door was blasted apart from the outside. Armed human Marines rushed through the smoke carrying heavy rifles. Their black armor was covered with burn marks from battle. One Marine spotted Ethan immediately. "Sergeant Cross," he shouted. "We're getting you out." But before the soldiers could reach the cell, warning alarms suddenly changed tone. A cold mechanical voice echoed through the prison block. Warning. Self-destruct sequence activated. Every human soldier froze. one Marine cursed quietly. The aliens are going to destroy their own ship. Ethan looked toward the burning hallway. No, he said calmly. They're trying to trap us here, far above the prison sector. Commander Reth stood on the command bridge, watching the battle collapse around him. Human Marines were spreading through the ship faster than expected. Entire security squads were already dead. An officer looked toward Reth nervously. Commander. Multiple lower decks lost. Another officer shouted. Human ships have broken the outer defense line. Reth clenched his claws tightly. Everything was happening too fast. The humans did not fight carefully like other species. They fought aggressively, unpredictably, and worst of all, they adapted during battle. Suddenly another officer turned in fear. Commander. The human prisoner has escaped, for the first time in years. Commander Reth felt genuine anger. Seal every exit, he ordered. Do not let him leave this ship alive. Meanwhile, Ethan and the Marines moved quickly through the damaged hallways. Dead alien soldiers covered the floor. Sparks rained from broken ceiling wires. The entire flagship was falling apart around them. One young Marine looked toward Ethan while running. Sir. Command says half the fleet already wants retreat orders. Ethan loaded a captured alien pistol calmly. Good, he answered. Fear spreads faster than fire. As they reached the lower hangar levels, the group suddenly stopped. Dozens of armed Varkal soldiers blocked the path ahead. Heavy plasma cannons aimed directly at the humans. For one brief second, silence filled the corridor. Then the aliens opened fire. Blue plasma blasts ripped through the hallway. Human Marines instantly returned fire. The battle became brutal, close, violent, chaotic. One Marine was thrown backward by an explosion. Another kept fighting, even after taking plasma burns across his armor. Ethan moved through the gunfire like a machine, fast, precise. One alien soldier rushed him with an energy blade. Ethan grabbed the alien's arm, twisted hard, and slammed the soldier against the wall. Another attacker aimed from behind. Ethan fired without even turning fully. The alien collapsed instantly. The Varkal troops slowly began stepping backward. Not because they lacked weapons, because they were scared. They had never seen humans fight this way before, not for conquest, not for glory. For each other. Finally, after minutes of fighting, the surviving aliens retreated. The humans pushed forward into the massive hangar bay. Rows of alien ships filled the giant chamber. Emergency lights reflected across black metal hulls. One Marine pointed toward a sleek Varkal attack ship. That one can break through the blockade, Ethan nodded. Then we take it. Suddenly, movement appeared above them. Commander Reth stepped onto an upper platform surrounded by elite guards. His yellow eyes locked directly onto Ethan. You caused all this, Reth said coldly. Ethan looked around at the burning hangar. You started it when you attacked civilians, he replied. Reth's expression darkened. You humans bring destruction everywhere you go. Ethan shook his head slowly. No, we bring consequences without warning. Reth raised his weapon and fired. The blast hit the floor beside Ethan violently. The battle instantly restarted. Human Marines and Varkal guards exchanged fire across the giant hangar. Ships exploded, metal screamed. Smoke covered everything during the chaos. Ethan sprinted toward the alien attack ship, 2 Marines. The stolen Varkal attack ship raced through deep space while enemy fighters hunted them across the stars. Inside the small cockpit, warning alarms flashed nonstop. Sergeant Ethan Cross stared silently at the scanner screen in front of him. The giant object hidden behind Varkal territory remained visible. Cold, massive, terrifying. One of the human Marines looked confused. What exactly is that thing? He asked. Ethan answered slowly. A planet killer. The cockpit became silent. The second Marine shook his head nervously. That's impossible. No species has weapons that powerful. Ethan kept staring at the scanner. "You're wrong," he replied quietly. "One species does, far away near Earth's outer defensive. The United Earth Fleet prepared for full war. Thousands of military ships moved into battle positions around Earth, Mars, and Luna. Massive defense cannons rotated slowly across hidden stations buried inside asteroids. For over 100 years, humanity had secretly prepared for this exact moment. Not because humans wanted war, because they expected it someday inside Earth Defense Command." Admiral Vera Holt walked through a dark underground war room filled with giant holographic displays. Military officers rushed between stations while emergency alerts echoed constantly. One officer looked toward Vera nervously. "Admiral, the Varkal fleets continue advancing toward Sol space," another officer added. "And the planetary weapon Ethan discovered is now charging." The room became quieter. Everyone understood what that meant. If the weapon fired successfully, Earth would die. An older government official stepped closer to Vera. "Maybe we should open negotiations," he said carefully. "We still have time." Several officers looked uncomfortable, but Vera's expression remained cold. "You do not negotiate with an empire that attacks civilians," she answered. The official lowered his eyes silently. At the center of the war room stood a large black console protected by armed guards. No rank below high command could access it. The console had remained untouched for decades. Most people believed it was only a myth. Vera slowly walked toward it, then placed her hand on the scanner. "Authorization confirmed," the machine announced. Suddenly, deep beneath Earth's surface, ancient systems awakened, hidden reactors powered on. Buried military stations activated. Secret weapons opened for the first time in generations, across the moon. Giant metal doors slowly separated inside forgotten craters. Massive warships emerged from underground hangars one after another. Near Saturn's rings, entire fleets hidden inside mining stations activated silently. And far beyond Pluto, something enormous began moving inside the darkness. Back inside the Varkal Empire, Commander Reth watched human fleet activity with growing fear. His officers looked terrified. "Commander," one said carefully. "New human ships detected across multiple sectors." Reth narrowed his eyes. "How many?" the officer swallowed nervously. "We cannot count them all." Another officer activated a battlefield projection. More and more human fleet signals appeared every second. Entire hidden armadas were emerging from places the Varkal never noticed. Asteroid belts, abandoned moons, deep space cargo routes. The humans had hidden military forces everywhere. Reth stared at the screen in disbelief. "For years, they pretended to be weak," he whispered. A scientist beside him answered quietly. "Perhaps they wanted the galaxy to underestimate them." Meanwhile, aboard the stolen alien ship, Ethan finally received a secure transmission from Earth. Admiral Vera appeared on the cockpit screen. "Good to see you alive, Sergeant," she said. Ethan nodded once. "Man, the Varkal weapon is real. And it's aimed directly at Earth." Vera's expression darkened slightly. "We know." One Marine looked shocked. "You already knew about this thing." For several seconds, Vera remained silent. Then she answered carefully. "Because humans have seen weapons like it before." The cockpit became quiet. Ethan understood immediately. The old classified stories were true. Humanity had fought ancient galactic wars long before meeting the Varkal Dominion. Wars so terrible that Earth erased most records from history. The Marine stared in disbelief. "You mean humans already fought species stronger than the Varkal?" Ethan looked out toward the stars. "Yes," he answered softly, "and millions died because humanity was not prepared." Back inside Earth Defense Command, another alarm suddenly echoed through the war room. "Enemy super weapon reaching full charge," an officer shouted. The giant holographic display showed terrifying energy levels rising rapidly. Time was running out. Vera immediately turned toward her officers. "Activate Protocol Blackstar," she ordered. Several officers froze in shock. One whispered nervously, "Ma'am." That protocol was never supposed to be used. Vera's voice remained calm. Neither was a planet killer, far beyond Pluto. Hidden inside deep darkness, enormous structures slowly awakened. Ancient engines burned blue across the void. Then something gigantic emerged. A human warship so massive it looked almost unreal. Its metal hull stretched across kilometers of space. Heavy weapons covered its surface like an armored fortress. And carved into the side of the giant vessel were three simple words: UEF Judgment, inside the Varkal Command Center. Terrified officers watched the massive ship appear on long-range scanners. One officer's voice shook badly. "Commander." "What is that?" Commander Reth stared silently at the screen. For the first time since the war began, the mighty Varkal Empire finally understood the truth. Humanity had never been weak. Humanity had been hiding. The stars above Earth disappeared behind war. Thousands of ships filled the darkness across the Sol system. Human fleets formed massive defense lines near Earth, Mars, and Luna, while Varkal warships continued pouring from hyperspace like endless waves. Explosions burned across space brighter than suns. For the first time in modern history, humanity was fighting for survival. At the center of Earth's defense formation floated the gigantic battleship, UEF Judgment. The ancient warship looked less like a ship and more like a moving fortress. Its enormous weapons slowly rotated toward the incoming Varkal fleets. Inside the command bridge, Admiral Vera Holt stood before the giant battlefield display. Red warning symbols covered almost every sector. One officer turned toward her nervously. "Enemy numbers continue increasing," another added. "The planetary weapon is nearly fully charged." Vera remained calm despite the chaos around her. "How long until it fires?" she asked. 32 minutes. The room became silent. 32 minutes before Earth could disappear forever. Meanwhile, aboard the stolen Varkal attack ship, Ethan Cross watched the battle unfold outside the cockpit windows. Human fighters rushed past like bullets. Alien cruisers exploded in the distance. Entire fleets were dying every minute. One Marine beside Ethan whispered quietly, "This is bigger than anything I imagined." Ethan nodded slowly. "Wars always are." Suddenly, Admiral Vera appeared on the communication screen again. "Sergeant, we found the weapon control station," she said. "But there's a problem." Ethan already knew from her expression. "What kind of problem?" "The weapon shield can only be disabled manually from inside." The cockpit became quiet again. Everyone understood what that meant. "A suicide mission." Vera continued speaking. "We are sending special forces teams now. But survival chances are low." Before she finished, Ethan interrupted calmly. "I'll do it." One Marine immediately turned toward him. "Sir." "That station is inside the center of the Varkal fleet." Ethan checked the ship's weapons calmly. "I know." The Marine shook his head. "You just escaped capture." Ethan gave a small, tired smile. "And now I'm going back, far across the battlefield." Commander Reth stood inside the Varkal flagship watching the war grow worse every minute. Human fleets fought with terrifying determination. Damaged ships refused retreat. Wounded soldiers continued fighting. Even civilian transport pilots joined the battle. The Varkal Empire had expected fear. Instead, they found resistance stronger than hatred. An officer rushed toward Reth. "Commander." "Human forces destroyed the 4th attack line," another shouted. "Their giant battleship is moving toward the weapon station." Reth's yellow eyes narrowed. "Then stop them," he growled. Moments later, hundreds of Varkal ships changed direction toward the UEF Judgment. The final battle began. Massive plasma fire crashed against human shields. Railguns thundered across space. Entire fleets collided in brutal close combat. The darkness above Earth looked like the galaxy itself was breaking apart. Inside the stolen alien ship, Ethan prepared his armor quietly. The two Marines watched him in silence. Finally, one spoke softly. "You really think we can stop this thing?" Ethan secured his rifle onto his back. "We don't need forever," he answered. "We only need one chance." Minutes later, their ship accelerated directly toward the Varkal superweapon. Enemy fighters instantly noticed them. Warning alarms screamed through the cockpit. "Missiles incoming." The Marines opened fire while Ethan guided the ship through explosions and debris. Burning wreckage slammed past them from every direction. One human cruiser exploded nearby. The shockwave nearly destroyed their engines. Still, Ethan kept flying forward, closer, closer, closer. Finally, the giant weapon station appeared ahead. It was enormous. A black metal structure larger than some moons. Blue energy flowed across its surface while the main cannon charged with terrifying power. One Marine stared in horror. "That thing can really destroy planets," Ethan answered quietly. "Yes." Enemy defense cannons suddenly opened fire. The stolen ship shook violently. Systems failed one after another. "Engines failing," one Marine shouted. Ethan looked toward the docking sector ahead. "We're..." Silence spread across the battlefield above Earth. After hours of endless explosions, gunfire and death, the stars finally became quiet again. Burning wreckage drifted slowly through space where entire fleets once fought. Broken ships floated beside shattered weapons and frozen bodies. The war was over, but nobody celebrated immediately, because millions were still missing. Inside the command bridge of the UEF Judgment, exhausted officers stared at the battlefield reports. Some ships still burned in the distance. Emergency rescue teams searched debris fields. Medical vessels rushed between survivors. Admiral Vera Holt stood silently near the main screen. Her tired eyes studied the final casualty numbers. Then one officer suddenly looked up from his station. "Admiral, Varkal fleets are retreating." The room remained quiet. Nobody expected the mighty Varkal Dominion to run. But they were running now, across every sector. Surviving alien warships turned away from Earth and escaped toward deep space. Fear had finally broken them. Another officer activated intercepted enemy communications. Terrified Varkal voices echoed through the bridge speakers. "Retreat immediately. Human fleets are still advancing. We cannot stop them." One frightened alien voice repeated the same sentence again and again. "The humans destroyed the planet killer." Vera slowly closed her eyes for 1 second. Ethan did it, but there was still no sign of him. Far away near the remains of the destroyed superweapon, rescue ships searched carefully through burning debris. Most officers believed nobody could survive the explosion. The blast had destroyed everything nearby. Still, human rescue crews continued searching. Because humans never abandoned their own. Hours passed, then suddenly, one rescue pilot shouted through the communication channels. "We found something." Inside a drifting piece of wreckage near the edge of the debris field, a damaged emergency survival pod floated silently through space. The pod was heavily burned, almost broken apart. But the life support system still worked, barely. Medical crews quickly opened the pod after bringing it aboard a rescue ship. Inside, Sergeant Ethan Cross slowly opened his eyes. The entire medical room froze. One medic whispered in disbelief. "He survived." Ethan looked around weakly. His face burned, his breathing painful. Still, the first thing he asked was, "Did Earth make it?" The medic smiled immediately. "Yes, sir. Earth survived, for the first time since the war began." Ethan finally allowed himself to rest. Days later, news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy. The Varkal Empire collapsed faster than anyone expected. Several conquered alien worlds rebelled immediately after hearing about the defeat. Slave colonies declared independence. Military governors surrendered. Entire Varkal fleets disappeared into hiding. The empire that once believed itself unstoppable was breaking apart from fear. But what shocked the galaxy most was not humanity's military strength. It was humanity's restraint. Many alien civilizations expected revenge. They believed humans would invade Varkal worlds and destroy everything in return. Instead, human fleets stopped at the border. No mass executions, no planetary destruction, no genocide. Humanity ended the war, then stepped back across the galaxy. Billions of aliens struggled to understand why. Inside a refugee station near former Varkal territory, civilians gathered around holographic news screens showing images from Earth. One young alien child looked toward an older survivor nervously. "Why didn't the humans destroy us all?" the child asked. The older alien had no answer, because even now, nobody fully understood humans. Several weeks later, Earth hosted the first Galactic Peace Summit in history. Representatives from dozens of alien civilizations arrived carefully. Some came out of respect, others came out of fear. Security around Earth remained extremely heavy, because now the entire galaxy knew humanity possessed hidden fleets capable of destroying empires. Inside the summit chamber, alien leaders watched quietly as Sergeant Ethan Cross entered the room beside Admiral Vera Holt. Many aliens stared at Ethan in disbelief. This single human soldier had become legendary across the galaxy. To some species, he was a hero, to others, a nightmare. A nervous alien reporter finally asked the question everyone wanted answered. After everything the Varkal Empire did, why does humanity still offer peace? The giant chamber became silent. Ethan looked around slowly at the frightened faces watching him. Then he answered calmly, "Because somebody must be better after the war." No one spoke after that. Because deep down, they understood the truth. Humanity could have ruled the galaxy through fear. But they chose something harder. Mercy. Months later, stories about the war spread everywhere. Alien soldiers whispered terrifying stories about human Marines who never retreated. About ships that kept fighting while burning. About civilians willing to die for strangers. About one soldier who flew directly into a planet killer to save his world. And slowly, one warning became famous across the stars. Never mistake human kindness for weakness. Because if humanity is forced into war, they will finish it.